Hello, I'm Howie Sheriff, and welcome to another live broadcast of the You Call This Yoga Show from Raleigh, North Carolina. Today, we're fortunate to have a live in-studio guest, Keval Kaur Khalsa, the director of Yoga for Youth NC in Durham. We'll start interviewing Keval in just a little bit, but I'd like to share that our show is an open dialogue with our guests and host, as well as our audience. So during the show, we welcome your questions and comments. You can Skype in at Computers2K Voice on Skype, or call in 919-518-9773, or you can even type in on the chat box on the website page. We're looking to discuss how yoga can be accessible for all people, and we bring on leaders in our realm to share their insights and experiences, and hopefully inspire you to experience more types of yoga throughout your life. We welcome also your input on topics and guests and evaluation of the show. That is on the page Rate a Show. Now let's move towards our guest, Keval. Keval is a professor of practice at Duke University in dance and theater studies. She's also been a leader in youth yoga in our region. Our nonprofit organization, You Call This Yoga, has been partnering with hers in the Triangle area of North Carolina to bring yoga and mindfulness practices to youth in schools, camps, and other projects. Let's bring on Keval. Good morning, Keval.
Good morning, Howie.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Keval risked traveling on I-40 to get here.
Not quite rush hour, though.
True, but
Yeah.
you just never know.
Right. Right.
Keval, tell us about your history at Duke and your professional experiences prior to becoming the Yoga for Youth director in Durham.
Sure, Howie. I was trying to do the math this morning, and I was driving, and I've been at Duke for 27 years. I like to tell my students longer than they've been alive. So it's been a blessing to be a professor at Duke. In the dance program, I've been able to bring Kundalini yoga to the program's offerings. And right now, I'm able to do a yoga research project where we're actually studying the effects of the Yoga for Youth curriculum currently on middle school students. I'm just feel really fortunate to be at Duke. It's offered me a lot of opportunities. My background is in dance and choreography. That's how I came to Duke. I went to school in Michigan, got my graduate degree at Ohio State in dance, and then danced in New York for about 8 years, choreographing, dancing. My dance mentor, Clay Taliaferro, that I met at Ohio State and then danced with in New York, ended up teaching at Duke. So really that was my entree into Duke. He brought me down several times to perform. And then when a position opened up in 1989, I was fortunate enough to get that. So I came with my husband at the time, my 1.5-year-old son, to Durham from Jersey City, New Jersey. And fortunately, it worked out. I love Durham, I love North Carolina, and I love Duke.
Hmm. Yes, I can appreciate that, having immigrated from New York to Chapel Hill. Though there is a cultural shift, the area is so compelling that one does want to stay. I did have a one-way ticket, even though I was encouraged to go back. But that's another
We're still
story.
here, right?
Exactly. That was well before I became involved with yoga and was a dentist.
Hmm.
Uh, you had mentioned involvement in yoga for quite a while too. Tell us how you were introduced to yoga and how did that impact you with dance?
Absolutely. I took my first Kundalini yoga class um, right around 1988 or 89. I'm sorry, 98 or 99. I first studied with Hardarshan Kaur Khalsa, who is a wonderful teacher based in Chapel Hill, and she has been teaching for many years. And right from that first class, I was hooked. It felt like it really opened me up spiritually through the body, which as a dancer, that was my way of
Hmm.
experiencing the world. And so I just dove right in. I took my level one teacher training in New Mexico at the Ghost Ranch, which was a beautiful place to train. It's where Georgia O'Keeffe did many of her paintings. And I was fortunate that Yogi Bhajan, who is the person who brought Kundalini Yoga, as taught by Yogi Bhajan, to the West in 1969, he was still alive towards the end of his life, in a wheelchair on oxygen, but still teaching. And so in our teacher training, we were able to get about a dozen lectures from Yogi Bhajan, who was teaching really up to the last moments of his life.
Mm. Well, I guess one cannot stop being a yogi.
And a teacher.
Hmm. That's lovely. And how did yoga practice help you as a dancer?
Well, I would say yoga practice helped me as a dancer because it helped me in my life. I mean, it really transformed my life. I think I was for quite a while seeking um, seeking myself, my soul, my spiritual self, and yoga helped me access that. Kundalini yoga helped me access that, and so I feel like I became a much better teacher, a much better performer, just a more authentic person, um, and more authentic in my relationships
Mm.
with others.
Yes, it's a pretty broad spectrum of benefits, and I can appreciate that too.
Absolutely.
Once I started evolving past my physical practice, and I was pretty obsessed with my physical self, might still be, since I have some chronic issues.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Yoga has been helpful there, but also as I've transitioned in careers and life's changes,
Mm-hmm.
that I've been able to negotiate them more fluidly.
Absolutely. And with more grace. Mm-hmm.
So we can appreciate that as people above the age of 21. What sparked your interest with youth?
Well, I've been, obviously I've been teaching college age youth for a long time. I've always loved working with young people. I feel like it keeps me young. And um, I would say what sparked me to really think about yoga for youth was meeting Krishna Kaur, who is the founder of the organization, the nonprofit Yoga for Youth. I met Krishna Kaur at a summer solstice gathering. There are big gatherings at the summer and winter solstices of Kundalini yogis. The summer solstice gathering happens in New Mexico. And she and some of her colleagues in Yoga for Youth were doing a workshop on teaching youth. And so I took that workshop, and again, I was hooked. This just felt like, okay, this is where I can really focus and I can really serve. And I see the value of bringing these practices to young people. I sure wish I had had these practices when I was young. I could have saved myself a lot of grief.
Hmm.
So I, yeah, that was That was the beginning.
I can appreciate it. It's a remarkable spark because for Krishna to bring that to the world, I suspect that she was pretty inspired from where she was. Can you tell me a little more about Krishna's background as you know it?
I would love to. I would love to. So Krishna, I think we connect so well because she came from a background as a performer, as an actress, a dancer. Um, as an African American woman, she even had her own TV show for a while in the 1960s. So she was a pretty phenomenal performer. She performed on Broadway, she was in films, but she was really on a path of spiritual seeking, and that took her to travel in Africa by herself in the 60s, and it led her to meet Yogi Bhajan.
Mm.
Um, she studied with him. She studied at his feet for many years. She lived in the ashram with him in California for about 10 years. And his charge to her was teach your people.
Mm.
And so even though she feels like, the human race is her people, she knew what he meant. He meant, take your practice into the African American community. And so she started to do that in Los Angeles, and then eventually with youth. But
Hmm.
she has always kind of had a mission to serve underserved communities. She is kind of in charge of the development of Kundalini Yoga on the continent of Africa. Currently, she just got back from Africa a few days ago. So, in her 70s, she keeps up a schedule that would be too much for me, I think.
Mm.
She's an amazing woman.
Lovely. Well, let's just reiterate for a moment. Viewers and listeners, if you'd like to connect with us, it's Computers 2K Voice on Skype, 919-518-9773 by phone, or you can type in the chat box on the website page. We're going to start with our first pearl of wisdom today, and Keval has shared some of her short practices and concepts for you to either listen and or practice with. Let's look at the first video.
Breath. Sitting up nice and tall, close your eyes down and put your focus in between your eyebrows and slightly up at your third eye point. Or if that's not comfortable for you, you can look at the floor. Turn your palms up and put your thumb and index finger together with your other fingers long, and let all of your breath out. And in 4 counts through the nose, inhale 1, 2, 3, 4, and suspend the breath. 2, 3, 4, and let the breath out. 3, 4, and inhale. 2, 3, 4, and suspend the breath. 2, 3, 4, let the breath out. 2, 3, one more time. Inhale. 2, 3, 4, hold the breath. Easy. 3, 4, let it out. 2, 3, 4. Take a deep breath in. And let the breath out and relax. And just take a moment to notice how you feel.
Thank you, Keval, for that first pearl. So viewers and listeners, we put in a practice as opposed to a very small element because teaching to youth has special criteria that Keval will explain a little further. Thank you, Keval. Could you tell us some of the nuances of teaching to youth?
Absolutely. So, Howie and I went a little bit back and forth about this. I wanted to give practices in these pearls because when we teach youth, if we talk too much, we lose them. So, we want to take them right into the practice and give them an experience. And of course, we then will explain things, we'll make sure they understand why we're doing things, but we really want to take them right into the experience. I wanted to share this 1 minute breath because it's a technique that I've found to be really helpful when teaching youth about breath And that breath is our most powerful, powerful tool. It's something we've got with us 24/7 that we can always make use of. So the 1 minute breath, by counting it out, that really gives structure. And usually I will start at 4 counts that most everyone can manage to inhale for 4 counts. It might be a bit of a challenge, but the inhaling, the holding the breath, the exhaling has many benefits. But that I find that that structure works really well. It's very specific, it's very precise, and they can just kind of grab onto that, and they really have to focus and concentrate on it. So it brings their focus and concentration right into the practice.
Beautiful. And with Kundalini yoga, there's not always a clarity of what is Kundalini yoga. Could you describe the foundations of Kundalini yoga practice and this part with the breathing so that people can connect those concepts?
Yes. So, what I practice is Kundalini yoga as taught by Yogi Bhajan. So, just to make that clear. And Yogi Bhajan, again, brought this practice to the West in 1969. It was prior to that a secretive practice that was only passed from master to student in India, only available to the higher castes. And so he was definitely an iconoclast. He was quite a revolutionary in opening up this practice. But he felt like in these times that we're living in, as in astrology, we're shifting from the Piscean to the Aquarian age. We have all of this information, kind of information overload, and what we need is wisdom to make choices. So, Kundalini Yoga uses breath practice, movement, and asana or postures. It uses meditation with or without mantra, which is sound current. It uses mudras, hand positions, drishti, eye focus, relaxation. All of these elements are put together. So it's very fast acting. So even if you can only practice for a few minutes a day, you can still receive benefit. And it's working on all the systems of the body, really working to build our glandular system, our nervous system, of course, our respiratory system, strengthen our musculoskeletal system, and all of that so that we can meditate and so that we can develop our mind so that we can make better choices, more conscious choices.
Well, that's pretty profound. As with yoga in general, there could be some concern about the myth of yoga and what it is. A lot of people may fear it as religious incursion into their beliefs from an outside religion,
Mm-hmm.
or there were practices that we're just not familiar with. How do you address the parental concerns of the community where they're just not familiar with what we're offering, or in this case, what you're offering?
So, part of our teacher training, and we have a 40-hour specialty teacher training in serving underserved youth through the Yoga for Youth curriculum. Um, what we really emphasize in that is really breaking things down and making things very practical. So we kind of, take the mystery out of it. And we really talk about, the health benefits of the practice in very, real and very specific terms. Honestly, it's interesting because we've had a satellite. Yoga for Youth is a national, now international organization. We have had a satellite branch of the main office, which is in Los Angeles, for 10 years now. We're celebrating our 10th year of existence here in the Triangle. And we have not experienced that much parental resistance, honestly. It's been interesting and even surprising to me. But yeah, we have not experienced that much parental resistance. And we always invite parents to come and take class with their kids. And we teach not in a studio setting, but we teach within a school setting. It could be often after school, in community centers, as you mentioned, at summer camps, with different kinds of programs. And so we always try to open it up to parents so they can actually come and experience a class for themselves.
Hmm. Viewers and listeners, if you're a teacher and you'd love to ask Cable about other practical ways to address resistance with parents, organizations, or community to invite inclusion, please reach out to us. And non teachers, if you'd like to learn more about the Kundalini practice and how Cable and Yoga for Youth applies it, then feel free to reach out to us too. But there's ways to reach out to Cable directly beyond this show. Cable, what would be the best way for our audience to reach out to you?
Thank you for asking, Howie. So directly, my email is Keval, Keval, at yogaforyouth.org. So that's yoga, YOGAFORYOUTH.org. And so that, you'll get me directly. The Yoga for Youth website is yogaforyouth.org. And we have an affiliate page. North Carolina has an affiliate page on that main website. But
Good.
the most direct way would be just to email me, Keval at yogaforyouth.org.
And citing it is an organization, how do you get funding and can the community help?
Yes, thank you for asking that too. So, we in North Carolina do fundraising. Obviously, we do fundraising as a national organization too. The communities that we work with often cannot afford to fully fund our programming at what it costs. So, oftentimes, we will do fundraising to subsidize programming. Right now, I'll put in a special plea to support our programming with the Latina Support Group at the Durham Crisis Response Center. We've been working with this group for 8 years now, and we work with the mothers and the children. So it's a really wonderful opportunity to do in a family yoga. We lost our funding for that program this year, and so we committed to it anyway. We said we're going to raise the money. So if you can contribute towards that, that would be wonderful. We also are looking to raise funding to subsidize 2 summer camps, the Justice Theater Project summer camp that we've been working with, which is a wonderful theater organization in Raleigh, and then Passage Home, which is a camp that works with young people in very underserved neighborhoods, oftentimes children who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. And so, if you can contribute to these, either of these, or just to the organization in general, you can go to the website yogaforyouth.org.
Mm-hmm. Our organization, You Call This Yoga, has partnered with Yoga for Youth over the last 2 years, and specifically with these projects. It's a delightful experience for the teachers as well as the participants because it's a very organized process where youth are having the yoga woven into their day based on their ages and their skill sets. Some youth have different capacities for integrating new concepts, and some could have some challenges. Cable, how are the teachers able to negotiate some of the responses when yoga is brand new to a child and having to negotiate their life and all the struggles that may exist of being in need or underserved?
Sure. So part of a big part of our teacher training is obviously helping teachers to feel equipped when they walk into that classroom. And this might not seem so obvious, but I think it's very fundamental. We talk a lot about being our authentic self. That if we walk into that classroom and we are just there as our authentic self, children want to connect with that. They want to feel that realness. And so, if Yogi Bhajan always said, if your presence doesn't work, nothing works.
Mm.
So if we can really go into the classroom, kind of get over our fears, or whatever is standing in our way, then I think the children are more likely to have a good experience because they've got someone who's really there and present with them.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing is that we keep showing up. A lot of the youth that we work with are used to adults that can't or don't show up for them. A lot of adults come in and out of their lives. So it's really important working with underserved youth to show up. I'm here. I'm going to be here next week. I'm going to be here for as long as this program goes. I am here for you.
Mm. Yes, consistency is essential
Mm-hmm.
in whatever practice that we're doing. Even the idea that someone is there can be very reinforcing.
Mm-hmm.
So I can appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
When did you become a Yoga for Youth teacher?
Oh gosh. I became a Yoga for You teacher after our first teacher training that we offered here in Durham, North Carolina in 2007.
Mm.
We brought Krishna Kaur in. At that point in time, the training was only 19 hours long. Now it's 40. It could be much longer, but we keep it at 40. But after that, we had about a dozen people take that training. And then there were probably about three of us that really wanted to teach for Yoga for Youth. And
Mm.
so we started teaching. Our first programming was with the Carter Community School, which is a public charter school in Durham, and it was with their summer camp.
Lovely.
That was the beginning.
Mm. That's great. How many teachers would you estimate are currently in the roster for our Yoga for Youth NC team in the Triangle area now?
So last year I added up how many teachers we've trained so far. We've trained almost 80 teachers.
Mm-hmm.
On our current roster, we've got about 12 to 15 lead teachers and teaching assistants. We found that going into the classroom, it's great if we can have two people from Yoga for Youth there. So our lead teachers have been through the Yoga for Youth teacher training, but they also have a level 1 certification. And even though the Yoga for Youth format is based on a Kundalini structure, teachers can be from any style or any tradition. So I just want to emphasize that is what we teach in the classroom. It's not just Kundalini, but whatever style the teacher is coming from. So the lead teacher is a level 1 certified teacher in any style and has gone through the Yoga for You teacher training. The teacher assistant has also gone through the Yoga for You teacher training. They may or may not be a level 1 certified teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So the lead teacher is really kind of mentoring the teaching assistant, but that teaching assistant is, I find, a pretty crucial role because the lead teacher has to hold the space of the class, and the teaching assistant can float around and help students individually. So they can help redirect students if their focus is wandering. They can help students if they're struggling with a posture or a practice. And so that can often be really helpful in just keeping the flow of the class going and making sure everyone has a good experience.
Lovely. That sounds ideal. How many yoga teachers out there would love to have an assistant who can circulate the room with confidence and competence to allow them to hold the space?
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like a very special atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
We'll delve into that a little bit more. But right now, we're ready for the fun and yum good health tip brought to you by our sponsor this month, Irregardless Cafe and Catering and the Glenwood, a catering venue. We appreciate their support of our show. Irregardless is a restaurant in town that, despite its funky name, has a 40-year history of providing delicious food. I eat there pretty regularly. But enough about them. Let's talk about some other food for the moment. Let's roll the next video and see what pearls exist. Do you ever find that some tried and true recipes are just lacking some of that pop and excitement that can bring new flavors and experiences? I've found that a banana bread, which has been a long time part of our diet, really experienced a perk in nutrition as well as flavor by adding some very special ingredients. I like adding blueberries and walnuts to this classic recipe from the New York Times cookbook, which gives it tremendous amounts of antioxidants, nutrients, benefits to the heart and the mind. Consider taking your banana bread or whatever your recipes are and exploring a little bit. Let's crack this one open. Doesn't that look good? The blueberries add a little sweetness, but do not increase the sugar content. And the walnuts add other elements to the bread, which gives it a little more firmness to compensate for the softness of the blueberries. Try that, see how it feels, and let me know. Enough about food, back to the show. But actually, let's talk about the food just for a little bit longer. This tried and true recipe comes from an era where we weren't so attuned to content in our food. For example, I'm using regular flour, an egg, and butter. So therefore, gluten and animal-based products are in there. I'm going to ask Keval just for some tips on how we can compensate for the egg and the butter in a recipe so that we can still have delicious, nutritious food.
Thanks, Howie. I've been a longtime vegetarian. I'm actually now a year into being vegan. And so I would say first, of course, the flour, for non-gluten alternatives, spelt. There are a number of, gluten-free flour alternatives out there now, which is great. In terms of milk, coconut milk, almond milk, soy milk, there's lots of non-dairy milks. The butter, personally, I like to use coconut oil these days. But there are products such as Earth Balance, or there are other oils, if you prefer other oils. And egg replacer, I think my favorite is boiling up some flax seeds, and that gets very gelatinous. And so then you can grind that up, and it kind of has that, gives the texture, that the egg is giving to a recipe.
Wonderful. So in summary, some spelt flour, some coconut oil, and some softened, ground up flaxseed.
And any kind of non-dairy milk that you would
Great.
choose to use.
Wonderful. Well, viewers and listeners, if you'll try that, see how it feels, and let us know. And then we'll just get back to our conversation about youth yoga.
I'll just say I love blueberries, though.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I go and pick them here in North Carolina. We're lucky in this area to have some You Pick organic blueberry patches. So I'll just go out all day and pick blueberries and freeze them, and then I've got them for my banana bread or smoothies all year long.
Lovely.
Just saying.
Yes. I know I've been having some issues with my nerves and muscles, which has been a chronic condition for me. And my physician was very big on blueberries, apples, and grapes because they have the skin on them. And that's current medical beliefs that skinned fruit is helpful for nerve health.
Excellent.
We'll see. I'm
Excellent.
still in a process
You're,
here.
you're experimenting with that.
Yes. Wonderful. Well, back to the youth and the youth training. There's a program that you mentioned in Durham for teacher training, and that's going on in the near future. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. And maybe I could back up and just say a little bit more about Yoga for Youth as an organization. So, Yoga for Youth is one of the oldest youth yoga organizations in the country. It was founded in about 1994 by Krishna Kaur in Los Angeles. And I'll just point out that the yoga in Yoga for Youth is an acronym, and it stands for Your Own Greatness Affirmed. So, our mission is to provide urban youth with tools of self discovery that offer hope, discipline, and respect for self, others, and community. So that's why we're here. We're here to support the youth in their own self discovery. So, as I mentioned before, the teacher training has evolved over this period of 20 plus years into a 40-hour specialty training. There are no prerequisites. So, you don't even really need yoga experience to take the training. You can still benefit from it if you work with children. Certainly, if you're a yoga teacher, but if you're a school teacher, educator, parent, staff, behavior specialist, counselor in a school, it really can benefit anyone who works with youth. The training here in North Carolina will take place over 2 weekends, April 21st through 23rd, and April 28th through the 30th. And so that's kind of Friday afternoon, all day Saturday, all day Sunday. If you want to get more information about the training, again, you can go to the website, yogaforyouth.org. If you have specific questions, again, feel free to email me, Keval, Keval, at yogaforyouth.org.
Wonderful. Our organization has worked with Yoga for Youth NC to advance their mission and ours as well. We've served as a funder in part for some of their programs because it's not always necessary to reinvent the wheel, as the saying goes. They've had an established track record in our area with relationships in the schools and other community organizations. But sometimes we bump up against resistance in the community, even when we have the best intentions. So I'm going to ask Keval how she would suggest you as teachers or other community advocates approach resistance in the community in one way or another for presenting yoga for youth or adults.
Again, I'm going to go back to that statement by Yogi Bhajan, if your presence doesn't work, nothing works. I think as teachers and practitioners, we have to make sure we're really clear about what we're doing and why we're doing it, and feel really confident in that. I think education is key. So I've come to a point in my life where I feel like if there's so much resistance, I'm not going to waste my time pushing up against it. I'm going to kind of go where there's less resistance.
Mm-hmm.
But if I feel like, well, this is just because someone really doesn't know, they don't understand, then I want to be able to offer them tools to understand. So one thing that we have come to do as a best practice with Yoga for Youth, if we're introducing programming into some place, we will do an orientation prior to the program starting.
Mm-hmm.
So we will let the young people and any staff, parents know what is yoga. It's an art and a science. We explain why that is. What are the benefits of doing yoga? We talk about Yoga for Youth as an organization and our track record, so we kind of show our credibility. We look at who does yoga, and we look at people that kids can relate to, famous athletes, musicians, actors, people who are in the public spotlight who are yoga practitioners.
Mm-hmm.
So we give them a background. We talk about what happens in a yoga class, why we're doing what we're doing. And so, again, just I think offering that information is what we can do.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Viewers, Computers 2K Voice on Skype, phoning in 919-518-9773. Let's move to the next pearl, and then we'll discuss that shortly afterwards.
A game that I created for Yoga for Youth is called Strong, Flexible, and Balanced. So this is a game that I love to do when I'm just starting to work with a group. It helps me learn people's names because we say our names in the game. It helps introduce postures or asanas to students, and it is very affirming. So it really helps to start getting that feeling of, yes, I can do this, and yes, I am this. I am strong, I am flexible, I am balanced. So I'm going to show you the strong posture. This is called archer pose in Kundalini Yoga. And for archer, we're going to take a nice long lunge with either leg forward, but the front knee is bent over the front ankle and the back leg is straight, and we're looking over that front knee. The arms come up with the fingers folded into the mounds of the hands and the thumbs up. And then just as if you're pulling a bow, an arrow, you want to pull back with that back arm until the right or the back elbow is level with the front knuckles. And you're looking over that hand, nice deep lunge. You're going to hold the posture with long, deep breathing. This posture really helps to strengthen the nervous system so that people don't get on our last nerve, or it takes longer for people to get on our last nerve. We can stay steady. And if you shake in this posture, it's actually a good thing because that means your nervous system is strengthening. Now take a deep breath in, and then exhale and just relax, and just come out of the posture.
Each of us has made references to the nervous system, which has its components that are not necessarily easy to access or manage. In adults, our nervous system is a little more developed or may be compromised over time, and youth have their own nervous system in development. So I'm going to ask Keval to explain a little bit about the difference in the nervous system for youth versus as we might have in adults.
Well, I don't know if I can speak directly to that, but I can say that, again, in the practice of Kundalini Yoga, we're really interested in strengthening the nervous system, and particularly in strengthening the parasympathetic response. So I think all of us, in this culture, our nervous systems are put under strain because, and particularly thinking about youth, if you think about the school day, it is nonstop. They are kind of stimulated nonstop. They're moving from place to place. They're trying to absorb information. There's all the social stimulus, adding in cell phones. There's just so much stimulus that is really hard on the nervous system. Our nervous system is kind of in that sympathetic response, just, trying to deal with all that. So, and the sympathetic response, of course, is the gas pedal. It's sending the blood out to the limbs. It was that fight or flight response. And that's great, but if we're in that state, for a lot of the time, then that really wears down our nervous system. And we just feel on edge. It's hard to be calm. It's hard to be centered. So much of the practice that we do is really focused on just balancing that autonomic nervous system, balancing that parasympathetic response, so that the blood can kind of go back to the internal organs, and we can recalibrate and recenter. And that's again why we put so much emphasis on the breath, because the breath can be just a really powerful tool to be able to stimulate that parasympathetic response.
Yeah, I could appreciate that it was a pretty meaty or non-meaty question. It was a very veggie question in that regard. I know you're not a neuroscientist.
Exactly.
At least you only play one on TV. Sometimes it's helpful to have some reading to deepen our knowledge. I know when I was in teacher training, a very simple and enjoyable book was How Yoga Works. And it described the story of a young person in India and their process in developing and sharing yoga. And it was very sweet, How
Mm-hmm.
Yoga Works.
Mm.
But there are many other readings. Keva, what would you suggest for our viewers and listeners to consider?
Yoga for Youth has a curriculum guide, and you don't actually have to take the teacher training to purchase the curriculum guide. It is not, however, you won't find it on Amazon. So, again, you would want to contact Yoga for Youth if you'd like a copy of that. And it has curriculum for elementary school and then adolescents, middle, and high school.
Mm.
I love Shaktakar Khalsa's books. One beautiful book is called Fly Like a Butterfly. And if you're working with young children, I would say that that is a must have book. And she also has a beautiful book that's a basic kind of primer on Kundalini yoga. It has wonderful pictures of real people doing yoga. It's a really beautiful book with good information.
Mm.
If you work with special populations, Louise Goldberg has a book called Yoga Therapy for Children with Autism and Special Needs. And I am still kind of working my way through that book. I met Louise at a conference and picked up her book, and she is an amazing teacher that has been working for a long time with children with special needs.
Mm. Lovely. Teachers, administrators, school officials, youth organizers, we welcome you to check in with Cable because she has so much information to share with you. One question may come up, though, is how long is a Yoga for Youth program in duration when it's presented in school or after school? And how much of the day does the school have to delegate towards that if it's during the school year?
Great question, Howie. So we have made the most inroads in after school programs, and we've worked with the Orange County system, Chapel Hill Carborough system. Um, we have worked in Durham public schools. Um, but in after school programs, our programs have run anywhere from um, 6 weeks, doing class twice a week, to basically a whole school year.
Mm.
So we work with each individual partner to figure out what's going to work, what's possible, what will work for them. Um, Generally, I think 6 weeks is a minimum amount of time that we like to do to really have an impact. Um, we also do little residencies. We are now a CAPS artist in the Durham public school system. So CAPS is Creative Artists in the Public Schools. It's a program run out of the Durham Arts Council. And so it's been great to be a CAPS artist for the last couple of years. And we've been able to come into schools and do workshops. And so we just, are able to introduce the children to yoga.
Beautiful. Yes.
Can I tell you?
Tell me more.
Yes. Can I tell you about a very exciting thing? That's something I'm super excited about. I mentioned before that I am part of a research team studying the effects of the Yoga for Youth curriculum. And this is through an initiative at Duke called Bass Connections. So I want to give a shout out to Bass Connections because they've been funding our research now for the third year. We have a team of Duke and UNC students who are working with us. So my colleague, my primary investigator on the research is Dr. Michelle Berger at UNC. So even though UNC and Duke are rivals, we like to work together. And I think we're the only Bass Connections team that is interinstitutional. So we have an incredible team of student researchers, both undergraduate and graduate. And we have been working with an after school programs in Chapel Hill, Carborough, and in Orange County for the last 3 years in their middle school after school program.
Mm.
What we're looking at, so one thing that's been a struggle for me is how can we get embedded into the school day? That's a much harder nut to crack.
Mhm.
But I have discovered, through research and through attending conferences, because this field of yoga and education is really, it's really nascent, but is really exploding now. And the field of yoga research in education is really starting to come into its own and starting to grow and unfold. So it's very exciting. But as I've gotten to know colleagues around the country, I've discovered some pioneers who are really embedding yoga and mindfulness into their school day and seeing incredible changes in the school culture. So I'm having conversations right now with three different schools, one in Durham Public School System, one in Chapel Hill Carborough Public School System, and one in Orange County School System. And we are talking about exactly that, embedding yoga during the day as a pilot research project for next year.
Mhm. And that's a real endeavor because currently our legislature is talking about changing the school curriculum, cutting out physical education and the arts.
Yes.
So
Crazy, crazy, crazy,
we're
crazy.
at a confrontational element here of priorities and space.
Hmm. And meanwhile, there are some, wonderful and courageous principals and educators in the schools who know what's best for children and are really working, to keep the arts and keep physical education in their schools.
Mm.
So I want to give a shout out to them and support them in any way that I can.
Likewise, let's review our next pearl, last for the show, and then we'll discuss some of those elements.
So I invite you to try with me a meditation that we do with the young people that is called Cross Heart Kirtan Kriya. This meditation uses a mantra, special sounds that help us to focus the mind. The mantra that we are going to use is 4 little tiny words: sa, ta, na, ma. Try it with me and play your fingers at the same time. Sa, ta, na, ma. Sa, ta, na, ma. This means existence, life, death, rebirth. So we're honoring that cycle that we are all a part of, that cycle of life. We are going to actually play our fingers as we sing Sa Ta Na Ma, and we're going to do it exactly like we did it. Sa Ta Na Ma. Your eyes can be closed or they can be focused at the tip of your nose. Just looking slightly open at the tip of the nose. We're going to bring the arms across each other like this, and let's try it together. Sa Ta Na Ma. Sa Ta Na Ma. Sa Ta Na Ma. Sa Ta Na Ma. Take a deep breath in and relax.
Sa, ta, na, ma. Consider just practicing and notice how it feels. One thing that I noticed was also that there were youth teachers for Yoga for Youth. And I found that very fascinating. Not that it's totally unusual in the yoga realm, but that there were several students from the region that have become teachers. So I'll ask Keval about what it seems for these youth ambassadors and actual teachers.
We're so excited when young people take the Yoga for Youth programming and really take it in, and then want to do the teacher training. That's that's amazing, and it makes it all worthwhile. Our teacher training last year, we actually had four young people. We had a boy and a girl, 14 years old, who had done programming at Passage Home the previous summer, and just really loved it. Loved the teacher, Miss Sharita Young, who I'll just give a shout out to, one of our beautiful lead teachers. And were inspired by her, inspired by the yoga, and so came and did the Yoga for Youth teacher training. We also had a high school junior and a high school senior. Actually, I think she was a sophomore and a high school senior,
Mm.
taking the training, and they were both already level one certified teachers.
Wow,
Yes,
that's pretty significant.
really impressive.
Our organization participates with Yoga for Youth, and Sharita is actually a contractor with us teaching in the teen club in Raleigh.
Beautiful.
She's been hosting that for several months, and there's a growing population there. Some of the male athletes have now joined in, and so it's getting a little cooler to practice yoga with Sharita at the teen club. So, teen club is an extension of our mission, and that's part of the partnership where we draw from Yoga for Youth's roster of teachers so that we can employ or contract really teachers to extend yoga into the community where it doesn't usually go. So we'll invite folks for one last little opportunity to chat with us. You can sign in on the website page. You can call in 919-518-9773 and Skype Computers 2K Voice. Coming up in a few months for our organization is an event called Yoga Fest NC. It is our annual fundraiser and community love fest and trade show for health and wellness and yoga in the Triangle area of North Carolina. We'll have about 36 teachers providing programming throughout the day. We've also committed several tracks towards youth programming. We invite parents from the area to consider bringing their children with minimal duress if possible. As it's often said, why did you come to the youth? He said, well, my mother made me. But hopefully there'll be more inspiration in the community to make it a more passive process and encouragement from the parent and more internal from the youth. Part of our funds that we raise for Yoga for Youth come from Yoga Fest NC. We've opened our early bird registration, and access to the information is available through the You Call This Yoga Facebook page on the events. You Call This Yoga Facebook page, events for Yoga Fest NC, where you can support our mission in addition to Yoga for Youth. Yoga for Youth is also doing their fundraising, and I'll ask Keval to reiterate how you might be able to support their organization.
Yeah, so you can support us locally here in North Carolina or the national organization by going to the website yogaforyouth.org. And we appreciate all of your support and all of your donations.
Yes. Teachers or interested education professionals, there's teacher training and assistant training coming up in April. You can reach Keval at keval@yogaforyouth.org to learn more about opportunities, possible scholarships, and then eventually you have the potential of working with our organization in sharing the mission. We have stipends for teachers because we know that volunteerism can be a very fatiguing process, and it's nice to have a little funding every now and then. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this show and for several others, Irregardless Cafe and Catering, plus the Glenwood, a catering venue in Raleigh. Coming up next week, we have the pleasure of Skyping with Giovanna Hyman, the founder and director of accessibleyoga.org, where you can learn more about the efforts throughout the United States and the world to make yoga accessible for those who may not readily have access to it. I want to thank Keval Kaur Khalsa for joining us today. I practiced that several times. Hopefully I got it right.
You got it right. You nailed it, Howie.
Oh, good.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's really a pleasure.
Can I give a final plug for my Kundalini Yoga Level 1 teacher training?
Bring it on.
All right. So I am a lead trainer with Kundalini Yoga. So I'll have a 220-hour training that will begin in May in Durham. And again, if you would like information about that, how to become a Kundalini Yoga teacher, you can email me at keval@yogaforyouth.org.
Beautiful. Feel free to visit the website, nissancommunications.org, where the show is archived.com. Excuse me, I was orged out. nissancommunications.com. You can see our show on the on-demand link, and that you could also rate the show. We welcome your feedback and comments at any point. We look forward to seeing you next week and any time in between. Namaste.
You're tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section on nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Atomos.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.